This is Milford Mine Memorial Park. It marks the site of the state of Minnesota's worst mining disaster. On February 5th, 1924, 48 men went almost 200 feet below the Earth's surface, only to have 7 of them emerge alive again. This is the story of the flooding of the Milford Mine. Behind me is Lake Milford, and it's beautiful this time of year. But in February of 1924, it was a scene of sheer horror. Locals watched as the level of the water dropped below the ice and began filling the tunnels of Milford Mine, trapping men hundreds of feet below the surface. Behind where I stand right now is the main shaft of the Milford Mine. This is where tragedy struck on February 5th, 1924. The first warning that any of the miners had that something was wrong was a sudden gust of warm wind. It was so strong it threw miners against the sides of the tunnel and blew out the lights on their helmets. In the darkness, they began to scramble for the ladder to get up. They were over 150 feet below the surface that day. The pressure from the water was so great that it began to fill the tunnel, and in 20 minutes, the water had reached just 15 feet below the edge of the surface of this tunnel. In that time, only 7 men made it out alive. The rest of them were trapped. This is where local legend comes to play. You see, on that fateful day, a man by the name of Clinton Harris was working the lift. He was covering for a coworker who was sick that day. One of his duties was to pull the emergency whistle should something happen. And of course he did. In fact, the whistle continued to blow for 4 hours after the event, when it was decided to cut the rope and end the sound. It took 9 months to drain the lake and to dredge mud from the tunnels so they could recover the bodies of the miners left behind. And at that point it was discovered that Clinton Harris had tied the rope for the alarm whistle around his own waist to continue the warning. Sometime later, there was an attempt to reopen the mine. But when they sent their first expedition of miners down, they claimed there was an odd smell of death. They had seen the visage of Clinton Harris, a man with the alarm rope wrapped around his waist, screaming with the sound of the air whistle, warning them to leave the mine, warning them of inherent danger. No one has entered the mine since. It's very visible when you're here that a lot of time and effort has gone into making this beautiful memorial park. But standing here right now, knowing the history, you can definitely feel an energy. It's palpable. It's like electric. I'm standing on the foundation of the garage for the Milford Mine. And though it might not seem like a terrifying place to be, I assure you, there is something interesting to learn. Only 10 days after the flooding, a mysterious fire burnt the garage to the ground, and with it, all of the vehicles that belonged to the miners who perished that day. Coincidence? Or is there something darker at work?